those sorts of issues, as well as, Sharrow in A and B, where a Sharrow is gonna exist in the middle of a lane where a parking lane might not be occupied, and you're sort of telling the cyclist to ride out in the middle of the road, anyway. I think the Transportation Commission needs to see the emails that have been coming in to the city. I guess I prefer, rather than having them trickle to my email, package them up and send them one later in the process. I'd also really think about this education, the education element. What's it gonna, what's the city gonna do? What's the plan? It's gotta be more than a press release, more than a, it's not something I think we've sort of undertaken before. An education element that tries to get to everybody who's driving in this town. And then I would encourage some sort of monitoring or before-after assessment. This thing isn't going to go, assuming we go with C or any of them, nothing's going to happen until October, so we have an entire spring and summer to collect more data about bike usage, about conflicts that occur, and we have so few crashes, we don't it's hard to collect. Hopefully we don't have any, but so we can have a before-after assessment. So I would encourage you to think about some sort of a monitoring program so that we know the effect. Are we attracting cyclists to the corridor? What sort of conflicts are we increasing? What kind are we decreasing? Those sorts of things.
As well as speed studies.
Yeah, as well as vehicular speed stuff too. So.
Well, and Les did that study too, that traffic study, that the drivers going through this 15-mile-an-hour zone out here, the average is 29 miles an hour that they're going. It's almost double what the speed limit is.
This is during school day.
Yeah.
Question.
Lynn Paulson, I'd also like some attention to the truck traffic. So we have lost trucks. They are not intending to go on Third, Hayes. I mean, they are just lost. And they take up too much space turning, they jump the curb, they do all sorts of things. So this idea that we can't have a truck route sign and that we somehow can't notify Google to fix their directions, that's got to be addressed, because it's too narrow now in the 30-foot section for a Safeway truck. It just, they didn't intend to go that way. Sometimes I think trucks come up from Lewiston and they make a right-hand turn going towards Troy that they didn't really mean to make. They should have just gone straight, but they turn right, and then they got to come back. They got to correct their error. And what they ought to do is go to the Safeway parking lot, hang a UE, and come back. So somehow there needs to be some communication and some direction. It's not to keep moving vans off the streets. It's not to keep construction trucks and what have you. Those people are not trying to get through quickly and what have you. They're creeping through. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about lost trucks.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience, because I come from both of those backgrounds, over the road trucking and construction. On Monday mornings, at least I used to work at Motley Construction. Monday mornings we'd have our meetings, and what we were going to be doing for that week, and we would come up with routes to get, because a lot of times we were working on streets within town, so we were coming up with, the drivers would set the routes usually, and we would come up with the routes that were not necessarily the most direct, but had maybe the least amount of traffic. Like, for instance, if we were working back over somewhere over in here, probably what we would have done was went out the Troy Highway to like Mountain View and then back in that way instead of, you know, at least with our trucks, I can't always speak for some of these other guys, but I think that that's the thought process. And as far as the over-the-road trucks, you gotta remember what those guys are coming into an area that they don't know that well, most of them. So yeah, do they make mistakes? I'm sure there's some that do. The guys that know the area, I don't think they're probably turning in those spots. But, you know, those are things to keep, you know, can we set streets that trucks can't use? Absolutely. But there needs to be able to be an exception process to that. If they're working somewhere in those areas, they gotta get their trucks in and out of there somewhere. So, I mean,
Question? Tying into something he said, in terms of getting, when you get the responses or comments from people, would it be useful if they could like check a box, you know, you have an interest as a driver, as a pedestrian, or as a bike? Because I'm thinking people who are like in wheelchairs are gonna have a very different perception than someone who only drives. And it might be useful to have some idea of the responses you're getting, where they're coming from.
And by the way, wheelchair users are permitted on the separated bike lane.
That's another thing. Some people have those
The-
little
the
flags and
automated-
they
the
go just
automated
like cars.
Yeah, Joanne.
I think it's also useful to have public meetings recorded. I mean, we can't always get Tom out, and we had all those meetings with no recording, except we took minutes. So I think it's very helpful. You have to know not only who the people are, but what their concerns are in writing, so that the whole commission can look at it.
So with the commission members that are still here, I know what Nancy's thoughts are and what Brian's thoughts are and Bill. Are there any concerns sticking out or any plans that you prefer?
It sounds to me like there is a consensus of opinion for Plan C. And, I mean, my concerns have been addressed by people who've spoken to them, so I would, can you do a motion?
I think we just kind
Or you
of,
just,
I don't think we need a motion, it's just more
Okay.
just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because we're not actually making like a recommendation to city council or anything yet, so.
No, I guess my position is that I guess I prefer C, and if we are unable to do C, why, B.
Well, again, in the public process, we intend to put all of it out there, and so folks can see all the options. But, yeah, the question here really has been, okay, is there a general consensus of the commission as to which of these three, as they're presented, are the preferred? And it sounds like that would be C in this case. And then we'll see what kind of comments we get back.
and can we talk about the meeting time, our next meeting time?
Sure.
How about the 25th?
How about it?
How about that
Somebody
date?
said the first though, is Bill, he left, so.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna be here, I wanna be here.
Well, the 25th would be the fourth Thursday.
Which is the traditional second meeting date anyway.
So we could do, what would you call it, not a workshop? Open house, the open house on.
Open house.
Open house on the 11th, and the 18th, and then the 9th and 10th, just commission on the 25th.
So that would give us a week after the second open house to compile comments.
That's
January, talking about January.
January.
I'm okay with the 25th.
Okay, well, let's, I think tentatively agree on that, and then if you want to check schedule, but talk about you guys. Okay. Well, I think we.
Thank everybody who sat through all these meetings and with such good plans. That was